So, Jemima, I want to start with you. When you start out to report this story, and you've been reporting this for many, many weeks, what were the big questions that you were hoping to find answers to?
Yeah, you mentioned, the glitzy White House event. I think we noticed that Greg and his wife Anna had started showing up quite a lot in the Trump orbit, attending multiple White House dinners, the Kennedy Center honors, and then of course the big thing was their huge donation to MAGA Inc., which is a Trump super PAC, and then another 50 million donation to a AI focused super PAC called Leading the Future. So we felt kind of that this had come out of nowhere, hadn't really seen Greg and his wife on the political scene before. So the big question we're trying to answer is, where is this coming from? What are they hoping to accomplish? And so that's what we're exploring with the piece.
And so, Jemima, what answers did you find there? What do you think Greg is trying to accomplish with this?
Yeah, I mean, one big thing from speaking with people that have worked with Greg and know him is that, Greg is not particularly political or hasn't historically been very political. People couldn't really place him on the political spectrum. They said he didn't really talk about politics much. So one thing to note is that this is a pretty sudden transformation. It seems like there's a couple of things at work here. One is that he's very focused on putting OpenAI in the best position that it can be, and really focused on, the Trump administration is very friendly towards AI and taking advantage of that as best as possible. And that seems to be the main motivation rather than some sort of like big ideological switch.
Now, Stephanie, Jemima was talking about past donations that Greg has made, and it sounds like there hasn't been very much political activity until recently. Tell us a little bit about his professional journey. I mean, even before OpenAI, he was quietly a pretty powerful figure in Silicon Valley.
Yeah, definitely. So, Greg was actually first an early employee at Stripe, and then he kind of rose the ranks there. Eventually, became its chief technology officer, and then obviously joined to found OpenAI with Sam Altman and Elon Musk and a number of other founders. So historically, he's actually had a pretty unique role at the company. So even though he obviously is very senior, he's the president and a co-founder. He doesn't really kind of have your stereotypical, like, managerial exec role. So he doesn't, in the past, he hadn't really managed people. He instead was kind of this, uh, amazing, like, coder that they would basically put on different projects. So he would jump around from project to project, coding and basically helping out whenever there was an issue. And so in mid-2024, he did take a 3-month break from the company, and, based off of past reporting that we've done, that was at least partially due to, complaints that some other researchers and engineers had around, his very particular working style and perhaps how difficult it could be at points to work with him. That's something that he's also kind of acknowledged himself and, himself in interviews, even with the information. And so since he's come back from that break, he has taken on a new role managing kind of couple hundred people as part of the scaling org, which basically manages all the chips that OpenAI has and works on kind of scaling up the compute. So, as Jemima said, his kind of move into the political scene does seem a little bit out of left field, but it could be a very appealing one that's obviously much more in the spotlight than what he's kind of been able to do in the past.
John, I'm gonna come to you in a second to get a little bit more into what we learned about him as a person and what's driving him. But Stephanie, just to stick with you, I mean, help us understand his role in the scope of OpenAI because he was a pretty central figure in. I remember when there was the Altman ouster, and then when he came back, he was a person that was very much in the mix here. I mean, is Brockman kind of the number two at OpenAI? Essentially, is that fair to say, or I mean, how do we look at him?
I mean, I would definitely say so. I think people in the past have seen him as Sam's kind of right-hand man. As you mentioned, when Sam was kind of briefly fired in November 2023, Greg basically quit in protest very, very soon after. And so, yeah, he's kind of seen as one of the top two most important people at OpenAI,
Right.
someone very close to Sam, who's been a big supporter of him in the past.
And so, Jemima, one of the things that we really try to get into with these feature stories is what's really driving these people underneath the hood, underneath their professional ambitions. What do we learn about people as people? And I wonder what you learned about that.
Yeah, I mean, at the same time as this, kind of political ascent, we've had this other, Greg related drama that's been playing out in the public sphere, which is this, escalating lawsuit between Elon Musk and OpenAI. And it's been going on for a couple of years, but it's, heightened in the past couple of weeks because part of the court documents that were released were diary entries that were written by Greg. So
Yeah.
they really do give some, yeah, they do give some, unprecedented insight into what Greg is thinking and what motivates him. And so there's a lot of interesting stuff in there, including, this is the time when they're talking about whether to turn OpenAI or whether to launch a subsidiary that's a for-profit instead of just being an exclusive nonprofit, as OpenAI was originally founded as. And Greg, he's musing about his legacy. He's talking about, how much money he could make from it. These are things that he seems to care about his place in among this crowd that he calls the kings of AI. He's very focused on. It seems like he's interested in how he's perceived.
So
And
this is all from his diary. These are all reflections from his diary that have come
these
up
are
in
in
the
his
court
words.
filings.
Yes, these are in his words in his diary entries, his personal diary entries, which were made public in the case. And at the same time, one source who worked with Greg told us that when they see him at all these events at the White House and such, that they think this appeals to this desire that he has for broader recognition. An OpenAI spokesperson said that, in fact, he's more focused on briefing leaders and government leaders on tech, and that's where his focus is. But it does seem like there's this kind of secondary thing of he's been in the shadows. He's relatively to Sam Altman, he's been that, lieutenant second in command type person, and maybe this is giving him a bit more of a profile that he is perhaps enjoying.
This is probably a silly question, but how is it that someone can like? How do you summon somebody's diaries in a courtroom procedure? I mean, I get it. Like I've seen movies, I've read about the trials and stuff. You can get your hands on anything, but you can do that? Like, like how do they even know that his diaries exist? That he writes in a diary, Jemima?
Cut to you like later tonight ripping up your diary entries so they don't get.
Well, I mean, these must have been. I mean, are they digital? Are they physical? Like, I don't know. Like,
Yeah, I mean, I think they were digital. It seems like they were based
yeah,
on the
yeah.
format. Basically, yeah, in a court case, anything that's related to what the subject is, and in this case, the Elon Musk and
Yeah,
the
and I
you know,
guess you just assume you're like, he must have kept a diary somewhere. I must be able to get close, I
they,
don't know. I guess
yeah, they
I
command
guess
all documents, all written documents, all digital documents, like emails,
yeah,
text messages. So this falls under that purview. Unfortunately for Greg, probably.
right. Steph, I want to come back to you here to close this out. What do you think this story says about the broader story of Silicon Valley interacting with Washington? We've talked about it a little bit. Are we going to see more of this?
Definitely. I mean, this has been, I think, a huge theme of the past year. The fact that DC and Silicon Valley are just, more intertwined now, like more than ever. And so I think, yeah, you might have some tech execs becoming, quote unquote, true believers in Trump and kind of what he stands for. On the other hand, I think you have other folks that are instead kind of taking advantage of this moment to get on Trump's good side because they know how important he's going to be when it comes to, for AI specifically, everything from regulation to making it easier for AI companies to get access to chips and power. And I think, as Jemima kind of mentioned, in this case, it's not exactly clear which side Greg falls on, but it seems more than likely that he didn't just suddenly become like a huge MAGA fan overnight. In fact, we actually found that 2 out of the 3 kind of political donations, other than these most recent ones that he's ever made in his life, are actually to Hillary Clinton's 2016 presidential campaign. So he obviously in the past, before kind of really coming into the public eye, like did support a Democratic candidate. So yes, I think pretty much like, we're going to see a lot more of this, a lot more of tech execs, whether they actually truly believe in Trump and what he stands for or not, like kind of appealing to him, whether that means donations or just appearing at different public events, that sort of thing.
Great. Well, it was a great story, and there was a lot of really in-depth reporting. I encourage everyone to read it. I want to thank you both for coming on. That is Jemima McEvoy, our weekend reporter, and Stephanie Palazzolo, our AI reporter here at The Information.